Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron. In my Back to the Basics program after the election, I talked a lot about the critical path method of planning and budgeting. It's called CPM. You can see it on the internet if you look on the internet. And PERT, Program Evaluation and Review Technique. These are techniques used by people around the world to plan projects, programs, etc., and to review progress along the way, and to spur changes when necessary by using management by exception and management by objectives. So these are techniques that a lot of people use. I'm going to explain them tonight because on my Let's Pass the Budget Back to the Basics before May 31st, I told everybody that I would replay these a couple times, this old program, so they could see how it ties into the program I did after May 31st. Before May 31st. Budget. Well, the budget passed. I looked around. I couldn't find the original DVD for Back to the Basics, #1, that I did after the election. I looked around. We didn't have it down here at Charter. My friends didn't have a copy of it. I couldn't use the one that I put onto YouTube. So here I am re-recording it, and I'm hoping it's going to help you because this new group that's in, things have happened since the post-election program. We now have Marcia Sterling as mayor, who's very, 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 very financially astute, perhaps the best financier we're ever going to have in the mayor's seat in this town and on the board of finance and selectmen for a long, long time to come. So tonight I'm not going to talk too much about other things. I'm going to talk a bit about these CPM and PERT review techniques that you can find on the internet. And we're going to say here now, as we flip to the next one, that the charter, and I don't have it word for word here, you can go get a copy of the charter at the town hall, in the town clerk's office, look under selectmen's duties and all that, and you'll see that the selectmen, also known as the Board of Finance, also responsible for the Board of Finance, they're the Board of Finance and the selectmen, they're responsible for the finances of the town, bottom line. Ultimately, they're responsible, nobody else. So they have to make sure that the town is run in a responsible financial manner. Now, over the years, we've had many people on the Board of Selectmen and on the Board of Finance, and we got some now that know very little about finance. I often question whether some of them can either add or subtract. They're more interested in politics. And finance, managing finances is a lot like mathematics. 1 and 1 is 2. Very difficult to say it's 3 or 4. If you talk to any mathematician, he knows that 1 and 1 is 2. Or she knows that 1 and 1 is 2. And when you begin to talk to financial people, they speak the language of finance. They take certain approaches to things, especially if they have masters in business administration or masters in finance or a lot of education, working with people who really know those areas and are used to being successful in those areas. They can communicate with each other. Now we're in trouble. We're in real trouble. Financially. Gets worse every day and every week and every selectman meeting, which is also the Board of Selectmen meeting. Board of Finance meeting. Because I have so much experience around the world with this kind of thing, I can see through all that. I can see what's happening. A lot of other people can too. But unfortunately, most people can't. Because they don't have the financial background, they don't have a mathematical background, they don't have a business background, and they can be easily fooled. But in times of financial desperation, which we're in right now, and I'm not going to go into all that, you can hear about that on the Buddha Hazy show, you can hear about that on the Dave LaPointe show, you can hear about that by watching every selectman meeting on Channel 15, or once they put it up on the internet, contacting the Charter CTV 13 on their internet, and you can see replays of that. They also replay on Channel 15 the selectmen meetings from week to week. They play them a few times, and if you call them because you have a special need for a group or something, they might put it up and play it for you, the last selectmen meeting or the one before or whatever, ones that are not on the internet. But in times of financial desperation, the finance board must take control. The finance board's always in control, but if the town's running smoothly and everything is running according to Hoyle, and we're not in the financial depths that we're in today, and a lot of new money's coming into town from growing the grand list, and the money's being spent wisely, and it's being everybody's planning properly, and the whole town knows exactly where the money's coming from and how it's being spent, and there's no surprises along the way. In the finance business, people say, Brian, we don't want any surprises. We want a plan that's accurate. We want to review it all the time to make sure if it changes, we can deal with that change one way or the other. But we don't want any surprises. So normally the finance board works with the town manager and the Board of Education and everybody else, the state, and anybody else who's involved in our finances from year to year, budget to budget, and over time. We've been in financial trouble here for many, 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 many years, and it hasn't all been Henry's fault. Some of it has, but not all of it. A lot of it is pure mismanagement by our finance boards in the past, and the fact that they didn't listen to the advice they were given by many, many, many people, including the auditors, and they just don't have a system that reliably runs our finances in our town. So they're normally involved, and as long as everything's going fine, they can be minimally involved. But when times of great desperation, like we're in now, the finance board must take control, which they have since the Republicans won the last election. Now, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an unaffiliated voter, which is 52% of the voters in our town, and I try to go with when I vote for people, usually I first want to make sure they're financially responsible. And if they're financially responsible, they'll probably get my vote. Not always, but most often. I don't care which party they're in or whether they're independent or running off the seat of their pants or whatever. But we really need help here. So this new finance board, which is anchored by a very, very financially astute mayor, well-educated, business degrees, finance degrees, from some of the best schools in the country. I've already talked about that on the other program. Other people that talk about it all the time, and it's in the newspaper. This new board is urgently coordinating the production of a plan for success. They're trying to take responsible techniques that they learned at some of the best business schools in the country. They're trying to listen to people who do understand all that and have knowledge of that, and they're trying to put together a plan for success. This plan for success must have demonstrable and measurable milestones. You have to know where you're going, how you're going to get there. That's management by objectives. And then you have to deal with exceptions every day, week, hour, whatever. That's management by exception. And to do that, you can use tools available in the industry, in the world, in all industries, in the financial part of the business. CPM's one, PERT's another. After you use them long enough, then they become ingrained in your approach, and you'll use them. You'll take that approach normally because it's what produces success. So now that's what the current mayor and Board of Finance are trying to do, at least 5 of the people on there. And as I mentioned before, there are two of the people on the Board of Finance that I don't think are very astute financially, and for many reasons don't always agree with the approach that the majority in the present Finance Board are taking. So they're trying to get demonstrable and measurable milestones and show them to everybody in town, the newspapers, anybody who's a resident or whatever, putting them up on the website, all that kind of thing. They're trying to have the best plan that they can put together based on the information they have, and they don't have all the information. I'm going to talk a bit about that later. They're trying to put it together, obtain the information from anybody they can get it from, whether they like them or not, whether they agree with them or not. They're trying to get the facts. Once they get the facts, they got to get them on a table for everybody to see, like they're trying to do now. And they should help them produce a plan that they can get agreed by all the stakeholders in town, everybody that's involved. There are many, 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 many people involved when you consider all the town entities, all the people that supply to the town, and all the people that receive from the town. It's very complicated. It needs to be demonstrable. It needs to be out in the open. Now, you're never going to get to the point where everything's totally demonstrable and out in the open, because there are people all the time that are trying to hide the information. I mentioned that last time I did this, that there was a person at British European Airways when I was there that went around betting everybody 10 cents that we would fail. Of course, he ended up being wrong. We didn't fail, but we did have to change the plans a little bit along the way, and I'll talk a bit about that as we go on, that process. Now, the critical path method at the top level, which was the Finance Board, is kind of simple. When you put a plan together, or a budget together, or whatever you're doing, you have a start and an end. And then you have milestones along the way that you can plan and you can measure against throughout the year and take action when necessary over a period of time. Now, on this very simple top layer critical path, I've just showed the start, activity 1, which might say is a month into the plan. Activity 2 might end 3 months into the plan. Activity 3 might end 6 months into the plan. Number 4 might be 8 months into the plan. Number 5 might be 10 months into the plan, and the end might be 12 months. And now, as you know, for this year's fiscal budget, we are towards the end of this year now, and we do have a lot of upheaval on the budget side for many, many reasons. So that's what critical path means. If the plan is done properly, the Finance Board should only have to deal with a top layer of with the critical path, unless, of course, there's a problem. Then they have to dig deeper. They have to go into lower level plans. For example, the police department's plan, the fire department's plan, the town garage's plan, or any other plan that we have at a lower level than the critical path at the top. So that's what we mean when we say the critical path. That's what is very, very critical at the highest level. And as long as everything's going fine, and we have a track record over the years of doing things fine, and we have competent people in the jobs, and we're using good techniques, then this will be pretty easy. But we're a long way from that. I would say we're at least 5 years from that, maybe more. Now, I want to show you once again the proper way of doing plans and proceeding, and the improper way. The proper way, and I demonstrate it with triangles, I've done this thousands of times around the world when people come to ask me to speak about this stuff, or when I'm in the middle of a trouble situation, I have to explain it to the people involved, the stakeholders. I use the same approach, have been for many years. So the left side there, you see, is the right way to do it. You got to get all the problems on the table, all the information, all the facts on the table at the earliest stage of planning. Now, that's a difficult thing, especially when some people don't want to produce the facts because they think it might hurt their reputation or their political party or their organization or their vendor or whatever they may be. So it's very difficult, but it has to happen. So if we get all the information out at the beginning, then we can proceed down the slope of that triangle. We review it along the way at every one of those bars you see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. This is just an example. You could have more or less in there, depending on how well your town's being run. And then you make decisions along the way to bring it back in line, if necessary, back to plan, or to do something else if something comes up along the way that needs an emergency decision, an urgent decision. And that's the way to go, from start to finish. And you can take a budget as one example. Now, the improper way to go is kind of the way we've been going over the years for a long time that I know of, and that is going up the triangle to infinity. And the problem is you start out, you don't have all the facts, you don't have all the information, they're not disclosed to everybody. Nobody can say to you, hey, that fact isn't a fact, that's wrong. Nobody can do any of that. So you go up towards infinity and you never, ever achieve your plan. You get worse and worse and worse and worse in trouble like we are right now. Now, the non-financial people, most of them are in the liberal Democratic Party, some of the Republican liberals, some of the unaffiliated liberals, have been running this way for many years. They've been going up the triangle, now we're in deep trouble. So, proper circling back when necessary as facts turn up has to happen. Because what most people say is that you can't, everything won't be 100% right for every decision you make. What you have to do is make decisions, publish those decisions to everybody you can, and the reasons why, and all the facts you can garner, or all the facts that are available. Sometimes they aren't all the facts, but they're all that are available. You get them out there, and then you open your ears, and you encourage feedback. You encourage people to come to you, short, tall, thin, large, whatever. You might not like any of them, but you got to encourage them to come to you with feedback to make sure you're going in the right direction. Now, this is where we get into an interesting thing, and when you turn to the next slide, you're going to see that even if you're going in the proper direction, down the slope, you will run into obstacles along the way. So what will happen is you'll be moving forward, then all of a sudden you hit into a problem, you have to go back a couple steps, you got to circle around, then you go back out again forward, and then you go back a few steps, and then you go out again, and this is just a simple example. It could be much worse than this. Now on the other side, you got the same sort of problem. If you don't come up with any all the facts up in the beginning, as you go all the way closer and closer to the end, then you got to circle all the way back and start again and go up. So that's what I mean by going to infinity. So when I hear a lot of the comments on TV and in select meetings and in the newspapers about the current Board of Finance and selectmen, they're criticized, of course, for not having a perfect plan. Well, you're not going to have a perfect plan. But they stepped into the middle of this right-hand side triangle, where all the facts aren't on the table, where all the facts aren't out in the open. So they had to begin to try to get all these facts out into the open, despite the fact that a lot of people don't want the facts to be out in the open for political reasons. And as I said on the first time I did this program, politicians don't like transparency. They don't want all the facts to be on the table. They don't like to have to meet objectives, timescales. They don't like any of that stuff. So it's very hard for them to succeed and produce a triangle that we can go down. Now, on the other hand, financial people love to have the facts on the table. They like to know exactly what's needed and what the problems are and what the advantages are, and they want to put a plan together to be able to do that. Now I want to show you another thing, and this is a little, each one of those lines that's on the critical path represents a whole network of planning. For example, the police department could have a plan that looks like this, with all kinds of activities in it that feed into the top layer. The Board of Education could have a plan like this, much more complex, of course. The schools, the library, everybody can have one and should have one. And then they feed their information up to the top, and it gets plugged into the system. If you have aids like CPM or PERT, programming computer type stuff, that helps. If you don't, you got to do it manually. Some are simple networks or plans, some are very complex. Some require a lot of review, some not many. If they're on schedule and they're going to make their plans, not too bad a deal. So it's pretty complex and needs to be watched. That's why you need to use management by exception to keep an eye on it. Now, the current mayor has set up a few meetings that I'm tickled pink to see. One is every 2 weeks she reviews with the town manager and the financial director on a Thursday afternoon the progress of the financial plan. And it's trying to find out whether all the facts are accurate or not. So far, a lot of them have not been accurate. We thought we were getting some extra $200,000 in from somewhere. Well, we didn't get it, and we're not going to get it. We thought we were spending $100,000 less on something. Now we're spending $100,000 more on it. So it's very important. The other thing she set up is very important too, and that is a meeting every 2 weeks to review the plan for getting more, to grow the grand list, to getting more profitable additional recurring revenue in town, which is very, 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 very high priority for us if we want to get out of this financial pickle we're in without killing the present taxpayers and reducing their value and worth and getting them to leave town. So we do this with facts. We do this with critical plans, path plans. We do this by having dependencies on other people and checking to see that they're being met and looking down the road to see if they're going to be met. I often say this is a bit like an engineer driving a train. This finance board's got to drive the train. They got to look down the track way down and see if they can see any obstacles before they get there and hit them. So that's very important. They got to have time scales. Everything's got to have a time scale. It's got to be defined properly. You got to know exactly what we're going to do. Now, they are trying to get that, like what's the time scale for fixing all the roads? Which roads are going to be fixed? When are they going to be fixed by? When will we be done with our $700,000 spending in the next budget on the roads? So there are going to be plans all over the place, and people are going to be pinned down to time scales and dependencies because that's the financial way to do things. And then as you review these things, now the Harvard Business School always says, well, I'll review them every 3 months. We're in pretty intensive care now, so we got to kind of review them all the time, daily, hourly. So like I mentioned, intensive care in a hospital, we're in intensive care here, our town is now, and our new mayor is retired, and she can spend a lot of time on this. She has other activities too where she devotes her time to charity and things, so she's not totally involved, but she is throwing herself right into the middle of this for no revenue, no pay, and we're going to get the benefit of her education experience and success over the years. She lives in Winchester, Connecticut on an old farm with her husband. So we need to also have the definitions verified by outside experts where necessary. I got a slide for that I thought would be popping up, but it isn't there. There it is. Definitions need to be verified. Don't be afraid to use outside experts wherever you can who really know their stuff. And I do see on the agenda for this Finance Board and Selectmen is probably hire a different group to audit our books rather than use the same people that we have now in that area, in addition to these people. So it's good to have the experts look at things, no matter what it is. It's always good to have them look at things, and it's probably less expensive to do it that way in the long run, although it will cost a little money up front. And then this Finance Board has to conduct periodic progress and decision-making reviews with action items. Whenever you see something that isn't going to make the plan and need to be an action to get it back on plan, whenever you see something that's going to be disastrously over-planned, then you got to get some actions up there to contain that and figure out how you're going to solve that problem. So that's very important. And now, what I want to say is, you don't listen to me. You don't have to listen to me. I'm going to put the back to the basics sign back up now, and you just watch. Watch the selectmen meetings. Go to the selectmen meetings, call the mayor on the phone at the town hall, talk to her, go down and see her. She has office hours 2-3 days a week because she's retired and she can afford to give you the time. And she is more than willing to go to other activities you might have in town, to listen to you, to discuss with you ways to improve the situation in the town. So everybody has to get involved. And my own advice is that watch her in action for the next 3-4 months. Because I'm sure when you watch her and the Finance Board in action, you will see the good parts of the Finance Board that I'm talking about tonight and the bad parts. And you will want to re-elect her and the other good finance people on there. The last thing we need on there now are 3 educators on our board. We don't need that. We need people who understand finance, who can get us back on the right track, and we'll stick it out long enough to get the job done, which probably will take about 5 or more years, maybe 10. I don't know. But you're going to see more and more. Each select meeting, some new bad news is going to pop up. And then someday, that'll stop being bad news and we'll be more or less on the right track. But we're a long way from that now. With that, I thank you very much. Back to the basics.